American cities cluster around buildings like these, skyscrapers and high-rise office buildings. During the day, there may be thousands of people inside, working, visiting, providing services, engaging in business activities of all kinds. For about 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, these buildings are home. A building like this one is a very special environment, and chances are we don't give it much thought. We're not likely to think much about the building itself, how it's built, how it works, or how it might operate when something goes wrong, like in a fire emergency. That's what we need to find out. Now, it's okay to feel a little uncomfortable on this subject. It's perfectly natural, considering what we've seen in the movies and on TV about fires in high-rise buildings. But I'm not here to frighten you or to make you nervous about something that's unlikely to happen. And that's the good news. The record of fire safety in these buildings is remarkably good, especially if the building has a sprinkler system. But fire is a possibility. And in a high-rise building, there's the potential for serious property damage, injuries, and loss of lives. To start, I'd like to take you into a part of the building you're least likely to be familiar with, the stairs. It'll help us understand how we can maintain a high level of safety during that fire that we all hope never happens. Anyway, I can use the exercise. In here, one thing stands out. Now these are water pipes. You probably never thought much about them before. They go to every floor to supply the sprinkler system and the standpipes. A standpipe is where firefighters attach hoses to fight the fire. They're on every floor in a high-rise, so water is always available when and where it's needed. Now that raises an interesting point. A fire in a high-rise will typically be confined to one floor or even a single room. And the reasons are quite simple. Most of these buildings are constructed with floors that protect against vertical fire spread. So, with properly designed and operating automatic sprinklers, it's unlikely that a typical office fire will ever get out of control. Now, you may not think that sprinklers look very impressive, but they're a beautiful piece of engineering. Each one of these has an element that acts as a trigger. When exposed to high temperatures, it releases water exactly where it's needed to control the fire. Simple and effective. Now, if your building doesn't have sprinklers, that doesn't mean it's unsafe. And later we'll talk about several things that everyone can do to make sure they'll be safe. Okay, back to my workout. All buildings are a little different. In this one, on the other side of this wall, is a vertical core carrying the plumbing, electricity, communications, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Because it connects all floors, it can be a dangerous avenue of fire spread. So a building core is fire protected. The walls and doors are constructed and tested to withstand a very hot fire for a long time. The stairwell itself is isolated and protected by fire-rated doors and walls. And many buildings have special ventilation systems in the stairwells which operate during a fire to pressurize the stairwell and prevent smoke from entering. It all adds up to one thing. As long as these safety systems remain operative, stairwells are the safest places to be during a fire. Now, the 7th floor is kind of a magic number. Buildings of 6 stories or less are normally considered low-rise buildings. In a fire, going down 6 flights of stairs to street level is fairly simple. Or you might be rescued by the fire department by escaping through a window and down a ladder. Above the 7th floor, we're beyond the reach of most fire department ladders. And we're obviously too high to jump to safety. So what do you do in case of fire on these higher floors? Now, the key point here, and I mean this very seriously, is that you should be able to answer that question already. Now, I can help a little, but every building has its own fire safety procedures and evacuation plans. You should have already learned where to go and what to do. The building you work in probably has a fire safety team composed of a safety director, floor wardens, people to assist workers with disabilities, and others. At a minimum, every building should be conducting regular fire drills, and all employees should know their evacuation routes. If you feel you're missing something here, do you have cause for concern? You bet. And it's up to you to do something about it. Fire safety is a matter of individual responsibility. In college, 15 flights? No problem. I could have run this far. I mean, let's face it, we're not all in great shape. So, I think it's unreasonable to expect everybody in your office to go up and down more than a few flights if it's not really necessary. Tell you what, let's go up one more flight, do a little research. Now, when you're evacuating the building, you're not going to be alone, and it's going to take some time. Let's do some calculations. Excuse me, could you help us out for a second? Thanks. Okay, a reasonable pace would be going down about 2 stairs every second, 1,001, 1,002. And we've got 18 stairs per floor, and then add a second for every landing between floors. So at best, we're talking about 10 seconds for every floor you go down, from the 16th floor to the street. And that's 160 seconds, or 2 minutes, 40 seconds. Now, from 32 floors, it's more like 5.5 minutes. And from 50 floors, well, you get the idea. And that's without stopping for a rest or slowing down once you get tired. Thanks a lot. Now, even if you're in great shape, it's a challenge. And here's something else to consider. You will have lots of company. I got a quick count of everybody on this floor. I figure there are about 50 people in the accounting department, and here in the sales department, another 50. Now, I could do this one in my head. That's 100 people. Multiplied by 46 floors, that's 4,600 people. And if they're all using the stairwell at the same time, it's going to get pretty gummed up on the lower floors. In fact, you should figure 40 minutes or more for everybody to get downstairs and out onto the street. That's a pretty long time. Still, it's not too long a time. In most cases where you have a serious fire, you will evacuate the building using one of these stairwells. Remember, these doors are fire rated for up to 90 minutes, enough time to get everyone safely past the fire floor. And please note also the location of this, what we call a pull station. In fact, if it's not a serious fire, you may not have to leave the building. Let's say that a fire broke out on this floor, right in this room, right in this wastebasket. A careless smoker dumped a hot ashtray, something like that. So someone pulls the alarm, like the one we just saw. Or it's picked up by one of these smoke detectors, or one of our trusty sprinklers goes off. In each of these cases, the alarm sounds and sends a signal to the building's fire command center, where the building evacuation will be coordinated. Sometimes the alarm will sound only on the fire floor and the 2 floors above and below it. It's just not necessary for the entire building to respond to the initial alarm. It's very likely that the fire will be quickly extinguished at its source, in which case there's no real need to evacuate beyond the immediate area of the fire. Any alarm means take action. People on the affected floors respond according to their plan, as they've practiced in drills. These response plans differ. One method is for the fire floor, the 2 floors above the fire, and 2 floors below the fire, to enter the stairwell and descend, re-entering onto a floor at least 3 floors away from the fire. Now, this is a temporary point of safety, where they wait for the all-clear signal or further instructions to evacuate. In non-sprinklered buildings, the initial response is almost always down and out. Many times, a pre-signal system is used. This simply means that the alarm is notification that an emergency is in progress. People on the affected floors move to a designated place near the exit and wait for instructions. The order to evacuate and further instructions will be given by voice communication as soon as the fire is located and evaluated. What we've done on the initial alarm is to create an area of 5 stories where no people are threatened by the fire. So what about the rest of the building? Well, consider this. Oh, excuse me, fellas. Let's see what makes a safe building safe. Now, a normal wall extends to the height of the drop ceiling. That's fine for an office. But it won't stop fire and smoke from spreading in the concealed space above the ceiling. So some walls are constructed from the concrete slab of the floor to the slab of the next floor above. Now, this wall forms a fire barrier. The materials are fire-rated and the construction is solid. All of the openings where pipes and ducts go through the wall will be sealed against smoke and fire. This is a fire protection feature called compartmentation. It slows the horizontal spread of the fire, just as the floor slabs slow the vertical spread. Let's say, just for an example, that the fire gets more serious. Building authorities decide it's time to evacuate more floors. In all likelihood, it'll be done by voice communication through the speakers. People on the fire floor and the 2 floors above and below are already responding. And now, 2 more floors above and below the fire floor will begin moving. At this point, the instructions may be for those floors to evacuate the building. Go to the stairwell that's the evacuation route in your fire plan. Go down and out. This is called a staged evacuation. Most high-rises use this procedure because in most cases, only those near the fire will need to leave. You hear a lot about not using elevators during a fire. You see reminders on every elevator. And there are a number of reasons for this, but the simplest one to remember is that the elevators just aren't available. When the fire alarm is sounded, the elevators are automatically called to the first floor, so they can be used by firefighters and other emergency personnel. They can only be operated by a key. Don't consider using them. Use the stairs instead. That's what they're here for. Now, about this time in our fictional fire scenario, or even sooner, something else will happen. The fire department will arrive and take charge of the building. Most of the time, in high-rise buildings, total building evacuation is done only by order of the fire department. At that point, all occupants will enter the stairwells, move down, outside, and away from the building. Looking at this building, you may be thinking, it doesn't look very combustible. It's made of steel, glass, marble, concrete, fire-resistant materials. And every fire needs a good load of fuel to get going, right? Not much to burn in here. It's against fire codes to have any combustible materials in the stairwells. The door's closed. It's going to be safe. We've talked a lot about stairwells as special fire-protected areas. It's very important to keep these doors closed. If they're open, the stairwell can completely fill with smoke in only a few minutes. And in a fire, this is where all the people will be. Not a pleasant thought. Many buildings have a device that automatically unlocks the stairwell doors when the alarm goes off, so people can get back in when they have to. In others, every 4th or 5th level is always unlocked to allow re-entry. Find out what your building system is, and don't defeat the plan by wedging open these doors for any reason. So how can the building burn? Fire needs fuel. Wood furnishings, plastic furnishings, books, paper, almost everything inside the building can burn if there's a source of ignition. We hear a lot about careless smoking. That's one obvious cause of fires. But also, appliances are often the culprits. If they're not installed or maintained properly, or if they're misused. On the outside, the building looks as if it wouldn't burn in a million years. But on the inside, there's enough fuel to make a really serious fire. And within a few minutes, raise the temperature in this room from about 70 degrees to about 1,400 degrees. Pretty hot and pretty deadly. And don't be fooled by stunts that you see in the movies. Real people can't run through flames to get to the other side of the building, or survive in hot, dense smoke by putting a handkerchief over their mouths. That's why fire prevention is so important, and why there are all these special fire safety systems. But here's one system that we still need to talk about. This system, us, and how we behave. Think about this. What was your reaction the last time you heard the fire alarm? Maybe you thought, oh no, not another fire drill, what a waste of time. Many of us become complacent. We're reluctant to stop what we're doing and go through the motions of a drill. We forget how important it is. As a result, we're likely to forget the plan when there's a real fire. Inside a high-rise building, and any building for that matter, the system that's most fragile and most likely to fail is you. Psychologically, we're susceptible to emotional stress. We may not think or act clearly or logically. But if we know the evacuation plan, where to go and what to do, we'll be better prepared to keep our stress under control. Physically, we're at risk not only from the fire, but from the smoke, which in a building like this will carry a lot of chemical toxins. In a smoky corridor, get down below the smoke, even on your hands and knees, and crawl to the exit. Because it's hot, smoke rises, excuse me, and the air will be cleaner down here. Now also, if you're trying to get to a specific doorway and there's a lot of smoke, you won't be able to see any door numbers or nameplates. And down here, all doors look alike. So, to prepare yourself in advance, count the number of doorways from your office to the door that takes you to your exit. In an open floor plan with lots of cubicles, count the openings, the lefts, the rights, whatever. The point is, in the worst case, it'll be dark and smoky, maybe scary and confusing. Plan ahead, plan now, so you'll get yourself out safely. Well, I made it. Now there's just one more important piece of business. Whew. Now, if this were a movie, I'd be joined by several other guest stars, and this would be the final scene. The fire department helicopters would circle overhead, and they'd come down, lower their ladders, and we'd all be heroically whisked off to safety. The problem is, real life is a little different. If there's a bad fire, the rooftop could be obscured by smoke, and the hot air from the fire could create too much turbulence for the helicopters. Whoa! And even on a normal day, it's windy enough up here to be dangerous. Rooftop evacuations look good in the movies, pretty dangerous in real life. But don't worry, knowing what you know now, you won't even consider coming up here, right? Okay. We've seen it top to bottom. We've talked about what you should and shouldn't do. Let's go through a drill where everything goes right. You work down there on the 29th floor, the fire floor, and you hear the alarm go off. The command center shows the alarm locations.
Hi, this is security at 35 Main Street. We've been alarmed on the 29th floor on the east wing. We've just had the
Command center calls the fire department.
Standing by the elevators to take you up.
People on the 29th floor are told to evacuate. Similar instructions are sent to the 27th, 28th, 30th, and 31st floors, directly below and above the fire. Other floors will stay in place until further instructions. The floor wardens on the floors above and below the fire floor report to the command center that they see no sign of fire or smoke on their floor. The command center decides that a complete building evacuation is not yet desirable or necessary.
While the report is being verified, occupants on other floors should await further instructions.
Meanwhile, firefighting equipment and personnel arrive on the scene.
We've already had the engineers up there. They confirm we have a fire in the storage room.
On your floor, the 29th, your floor warden coordinates with the room monitors to check every room and cubicle on the floor. A room-by-room search to make sure everyone's getting out quickly. Others have been assigned to assist those with disabilities or special needs. People with disabilities sometimes have a different evacuation plan. It may call for them to report to a designated staging area where special assistance in evacuating will be provided. In a few minutes, the fire is suppressed by sprinklers. The firefighters make sure it's out and won't flare up again. No one is hurt, and damage is minimal. In the best of all possible worlds, that's how it works. Correction. In the best of all possible worlds, there is no fire. Which means I can safely use the elevator. Terra firma. Remember, every building is different, and every fire plan is a little different. But your building will have a plan. Find out what it is and follow it. And remember, the most important part of the plan is you.